Initially, it was just a tiny blip on the radar screen, too small to trigger a response, too slow to cause concern. But then the vessel didn't change course, continuing its trajectory toward the USS Gerald R. Ford, the largest, most modern aircraft carrier the U.S. Navy has ever put to sea. It bore no hull number and responded to no radio hails. It simply drifted silently, as if scrutinizing something, in a region of the ocean where a single false signal could unleash a torrent of firepower. Such a silent object was no longer just a fishing boat. It was an unanswered question, and with every passing second, that question grew more dangerous. Inside the Gerald R. Ford's Combat Information Center, every radar had locked onto the target. Weapons were primed. Everyone knew silence could be a camouflage for the most dangerous thing, a surprise attack. What happens when a $13 billion floating superfortress confronts a small, unidentified fishing boat? Where did it come from? And more importantly, what was its mission in these highly sensitive waters? Watch the video now to find out the answers. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss our exciting upcoming content. The apex of power, the USS Gerald R. Ford. Amidst the vast ocean, where the horizon is swallowed by the scorching sun, an enormous steel leviathan glides as if defying the laws of physics. The USS Gerald R. Ford CVN-78 is a living testament to the U.S. Navy's ambition and global dominance. This isn't just an aircraft carrier. It's a floating superpower, valued at over $13.3 billion, the most expensive mobile military asset ever invested in by humanity. But money isn't the only thing that makes this ship special. Part of the Ford class, the new generation of aircraft carriers replacing the Nimitz class, the Gerald R. Ford measures 333 meters in length, nearly 78 meters wide at its flight deck, and displaces over 100,000 tons. This allows it to carry more than 75 aircraft, including FA-18EF Super Hornets, F-35C Lightning IIs, E-2D Hawkeye reconnaissance aircraft, and MQ-25 Stingray refueling UAVs. Each day, the Ford can conduct 160 takeoffs and landings, and in an emergency, that number can surge to 270, a frequency far surpassing any competitor. This capability is thanks to EMALS, the electromagnetic aircraft launch system, which completely replaces the cumbersome old steam catapult system with extremely powerful pulse energy. EMALS can accelerate a combat aircraft weighing over 30 tons to more than 250 kilometers in just a few seconds. This not only increases productivity, but also reduces wear and tear, saves manpower, and minimizes long-term maintenance costs. And when battle ensues, the Ford isn't alone. It boasts multi-layered defenses that any adversary would dread. On deck are the dual-band radar system, comprising AAN SPY-3 X-band and SPI-4 S-band, capable of scanning all aerial and surface targets within a range of hundreds of nautical miles. Below deck is the SSDS Mk2, an automated combat control system that can classify, evaluate, and fire within seconds once a threat is confirmed. Should a cruise missile penetrate the first layer of defense, it would face the Rayam-116 rolling airframe missile ram, a short-range defensive missile capable of diverting and destroying incoming supersonic targets. If RAM isn't enough, the Phalanx CIWS, a 20mm cannon that can fire 400 or 500 rounds per minute, would be the last resort, forming a dense steel wall capable of tearing apart any flying object. Even more daunting, the USS Gerald R. Ford can deploy laser weapons. The Helios system, a directed energy weapon in the integration phase, boasts a power output of up to 150 kilobars, capable of incinerating sensors, destroying drones, or neutralizing close-range missiles. Combined with the power from two high-output A-1B nuclear reactors, the Ford can not only operate for 90 consecutive days, but also supply enough electricity for all weapons, radars, electronic warfare equipment, and high-energy defenses the Navy might develop over the next 50 years. This ship is an enormous machine, but it doesn't lack sophistication. Each advanced weapons elevator can transport 11 tons of ordnance to the deck in mere tens of seconds. All operations, from refueling to missile loading, are maximized for automation, reducing personnel by over 600 compared to the previous generation, while simultaneously increasing responsiveness in emergency situations. With its entire escort group, including Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, Ticonderoga-class cruisers, and Virginia-class nuclear attack submarines. The Gerald R. Ford is not only America's steel fist, but also a diplomatic message forged in steel sent to the world. Any hostile act will be crushed before it can fully materialize. And that's why, when this small, seemingly harmless object began to silently approach the bow through the fog, every optical lens, every radar station, and every eye in the Combat Information Center focused on it. The Gerald R. Ford could not afford a second USS Cole incident. Everything was about to begin. The mysterious fishing boat in the darkness. The evening at sea unfolded like a tranquil painting, with only the sound of waves forming gentle ripples under the pale moonlight. Fog swirled around the deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford like a hazy curtain, creating a two-dimensional world, real and ethereal. In that night, a faint blip gradually appeared on the X-band radar, small, low, and not large enough to warrant immediate engagement. But the smaller, the more innocuous, the easier it was for the flagship to let its guard down. The fishing boat was about 15-20 meters long, with a hull reinforced by thin steel or fiberglass. It had no running lights, almost completely dark, except for a tiny red light glowing in a corner of the pilot house. Like the ghostly gleam of a distant lighthouse, its engine seemed to be off. The boat quietly drifting on the water, silently heading toward the massive aircraft carrier's bow. The Ford's radar detected this shadow, but the signal resembled a typical fishing boat, a common radar camouflage tactic employed by non-state actors, appearing as civilian vessels but posing a deadly threat. The boat seemed to follow a simple operating pattern, disappearing into the night, then reappearing and closing in, with no signs of communication or acknowledgement. On deck, Ford's crew detected the signal via wake signature radar based on waveform analysis, a clear indication of a maneuvering vessel, not just aimlessly drifting. The ship's intelligence also detected a faint heat signature on the pilot house roof, enough to prompt the CIC Combat Information Center officer to immediately raise the alert to yellow, meaning strict monitoring status. The atmosphere in the CIC became taut. On the radar screen, the target was just a small white dot, but everyone understood the lesson of the USS Cole. A small boat could carry enough explosives to tear a massive hole in the side of an American warship. From the control room, a hushed voice reported, "Cameras steady, no weapon activation." The boat continued to drift, the more discreet, the more dangerous. This vessel showed signs of adopting low RCS stealth craft principles, similar to fast boats using composite hulls and special radar reflective angles, like Zumwalt or Hamina-class vessels, to reduce radar signatures, making them difficult for a large mass of steel like the Gerald Ford to detect in time. At that moment, the murky darkness transformed into a psychological battlefield. Every action had to be quick and precise. The dual-band radar continuously scanned. The SSDS Mk2 identified the target as non-civilian, but exhibiting unusual behavior. Weapon systems were ready, CIWS, RAM, but not yet engaged. The carrier's pilot house glowed with the blue light from the control officer's HUD, displaying the radar cross-section and distance. About 300 meters, 200 meters, 150 meters, still at a low threat assessment. And so, a tense drama unfolded, a silent standoff between a multi-billion-dollar superwarship and an anonymous fishing boat. Every surveillance camera was activated. Every crew member on deck knew that one mistake could lead to catastrophe. The haunting specter of the USS Cole. 03:14 a.m. The AN-SPY 3 radar screen on the USS Gerald R. Ford displayed a fuzzy, faint blip, smaller than even a military Zodiac boat. But inside the Combat Information Center, CIC, the ship's nerve center, everything was moving as if entering a maximum-level combat scenario. The captain, Colonel Robert N. Weitzman, strode to the control station, his eyes unblinking from the three-dimensional tactical display. "Unlock weapon systems. Activate SSDS." His voice was decisive. Just seconds later, the ship's self-defense system, Mk2 SSDS Mk2, was fully online. Every sensor, from radar, sonar, infrared sensors, immediately connected real-time data. That small target was now in the threat box, an approximately 300 square meter area identified by AI as close enough to cause serious damage if it contained explosives. On the flight deck, The phalanx CIWS Block 1B gun mount rotated, ready to fire thousands of 20mm rounds in seconds, if the order was given. Several decks below, the RIM-116 RAM and RIM-162 ESSM missile launchers were loaded, missile covers protruding from vertical launch cells, the aiming system automatically in semi-active radar and dual infrared mode. In the engine room, the Helios laser system was warming up, testing its 100 kW power in a real-world scenario. If the target was a UAV or modified drone, the laser would incinerate its navigation sensors, causing the device to fall into the sea without exploding. At the stern, two FA-18E Super Hornets and an E-2D Hawkeye had just been launched by the EMEL's electromagnetic system. The E-2D's rotating radar began to expand its surveillance range to a full 200 nautical miles around, in case this wasn't a solitary attack. The entire crew, over 2,600 people, shifted to general quarters. Each person donned fire-resistant gear and gas masks, securely locking deck compartments according to the anti-intrusion diagram. Thick, 25-centimeter doors automatically closed, dividing the ship into 23 independent battle zones. Inside the CIC, a weapons officer monitored the target board, muttering like an incantation, "Don't let it be like 2000." The Al-Qaeda terrorists steered a speedboat containing 300 kilos of explosives into the destroyer USS Cole in Yemen, killing 17 U.S. sailors and tearing a 12-meter wide hole in the ship. No one on the Gerald R. Ford had forgotten that scar. The only difference in 2000 technology was rudimentary. In 2025, everything had changed. But danger, sometimes, comes from familiarity. As the fishing boat approached the bow, the distance was only 200 meters. It didn't respond to radio signals. It didn't transmit AIS automatic identification system. No flag, no IFF identify friend or foe radar response. On the tactical display, the target shifted from unknown contact to suspect boat. At that very moment, an order rang out. "Deploy RHIB. Boarding team ready. We won't let it get any closer." 6 Navy SEALs in the inspection team, fully armed with M4A1s, mobile torpedo disabling mines, and thermal night vision goggles, sped down an 11-meter RHIB Mark V rigid hull inflatable boat. Skimming across the water at 40 knots, the counterterrorism scenario, live combat, had officially begun. When a supercarrier is forced to fire. 3:37 a.m. on the deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford, the rapid response team had deployed an 11M RHIB to approach the target from the ship's EOIR electro-optical infrared surveillance system. The image of the fishing boat appeared clearly, a composite hull coated with sea salt, no hull number, no flag, and a sealed pilot house. Its engine was off, the boat drifting aimlessly as if unmanned. Following the procedure for dealing with unfamiliar vessels at close range, the 6-person inspection team, wearing fragmentation armor, carried magnetic interference scanners, surface temperature thermal viewers, and a handheld AIS decoder in case it was merely a civilian vessel that had lost its way. The RHIB was 70 meters from the fishing boat when it happened. Suddenly, the fishing boat's engine roared to life. The diesel turbine sound surged. The boat switched to maximum thrust. No warning, no course change, no explanation. It suddenly accelerated to over 28 knots. Its bow aimed directly at the starboard side of the USS Gerald R. Ford, precisely at the aircraft refueling station. In the Combat Information Center, the SSDS Mk2 system immediately classified the situation as a high-speed maneuvering threat. The ANSPY-3 radar locked onto the target. Electro-optical infrared cameras mounted on the automated weapon control system detected a low-frequency electromagnetic interference burst emanating from the fishing boat's deck, possibly a jamming device or a remote detonator. First layer of response, CIWS. The phalanx CIWS Block 1B gun mount opened fire. Within 3.8 seconds, nearly 450 20mm rounds were fired in a fan-shaped spray, shredding the water in front of the target. A portion of the fishing boat's hull was hit, the fiberglass shell torn, a patch of fire erupting, but the boat did not stop. Second layer of response, RAM, ESSM. The combat commander ordered the simultaneous activation of 2 MCO-49 launchers, 4 RIM-116 RAM missiles, and 2 RIM-162 ESSM Block II missiles were launched. The rams, with dual infrared guidance, locked onto the engine's heat signature. The ESSMs, with active radar guidance, were used for situations involving heat decoys or jamming devices. Within 5 seconds, the first 2 rams struck the boat's stern, destroying the engine room. The third ram hit midship. The fourth missed, but the ESSM compensated, striking the boat's deck, creating a violent explosion. The fishing boat still did not completely explode. A section of the hull, reinforced with triple-layered steel, remained afloat, continuing to drift by inertia, still 180 meters from the USS Gerald R. Ford. Third layer of response. Helios. The high-energy Helios laser 150 kilo was activated, targeting the remaining structure of the pilot house. The directed laser focused for 4 seconds, burning through the composite hull, causing an internal fire. Smoke billowed. Heat surged. The fishing boat's navigation system shut down completely. It began to turn broadside, disoriented. Fourth layer of response, remote attack UAV. From an altitude of 15,000 feet, an MQ-9 Reaper, which had been flying surveillance to the south to guard against diversionary tactics, received target designation. On board, it carried an AGM-114R Hellfire II within 22 seconds of the confirmation order. The missile left its pylon, flying a low trajectory, striking the very end of the boat's wreckage, the final explosion ending the entire threat. The fishing boat exploded. Hydroacoustic pressure exceeded safe limits within a 100-meter radius. On the Ford's deck, all vibration sensors reported a level 3 alert, but there was no surface or hull damage. Flaming debris drifted eastward. The Arhib turned around to approach. A section of the engine casing was recovered, bearing traces of a titanium alloy mixture and electronic circuit boards using a non-standard US GNSS system. A circuit board, half intact, showed a detonator circuit using carbon nanotube transistors, technology typically found only in advanced stealth military equipment. No one on the Ford spoke. Everyone understood if they had been just 10 seconds slower. It could have been more than just material loss. It could have been the collapse of the US Navy's greatest pride at sea. Stateless phantom debris, hypotheses, and the silence. Early that morning, the waters south of the Gulf of Oman seemed to return to a state of calm. But below deck, on the USS Gerald R. Ford, no one truly breathed a sigh of relief. The technical team was still operating at full capacity in the analysis bay behind the middeck, where debris from the recently destroyed fishing boat was brought in for examination. In the small, secluded room, white lights illuminated the charred remnants, a torn engine section, warped hull plating, and shredded electronic circuit fragments. The Navy's Field Battle Analysis Kit, utilizing Raman spectroscopy and electron microscopy, began scanning every millimeter. The first material detected was a Kevlar epoxy composite, a structure commonly used in lightweight body armor. Some hollow compartments within the hull were designed with a honeycomb structure, very similar to specialized designs for concealing plastic explosives or mini UAVs. Intact printed circuit board sections showed nanocarbon terminals, high-grade transistors not found in any common commercial equipment. In the engine casing, the technical team found a global navigation satellite system GNSS microchip cluster, but it wasn't American. More notably, during the retrieval of residual data packets, the Ford's band capture system detected a series of burst packets, transmitted at a frequency of 1.225 GHz, a dedicated navigation frequency typically only seen in encrypted military systems. This boat was not civilian operated. All evidence pointed to this was a semi-autonomous attack vehicle, programmed to ram its target, with guidance beyond standard civilian capabilities. When the report was forwarded to the aircraft carrier's command center, the cost of the response began to be tallied. 4 RIM-116 RAM missiles, totaling over $1.1 million. 2 RIM-162 ESSM Block II missiles, nearly $3.8 million. 1 AGM-114R Hellfire II launched from a long-range attack UAV, approximately $150,000. The Helios system used its 150 kilowatt laser to incinerate the control unit, an estimated $500,000 in lifetime operational cost, maintenance costs after CIWS engagement, and Level 1 alert system reconfiguration, another $12 million. In total, A single response lasting under 3 minutes cost the U.S. Navy over $17 million, not including the risk of greater losses if the response had been delayed. A classified meeting was convened via military satellite link, connecting Central Command, the 5th Fleet stationed in Bahrain, and an analysis group from the Office of Naval Intelligence. The report sent was extremely concise. Unidentified target, non-civilian technology, continued assessment of possible links to active UAV/USV systems in the Red Sea, Hormuz, and Eastern Mediterranean. No nation was explicitly mentioned, but every person in that meeting room understood if there was any force capable of manufacturing a small, uncrewed, radar stealth composite hulled suicide vessel with a silent engine and the ability to close on the USS Gerald R. Ford in less than 50 seconds. It certainly wasn't local fishermen or some ragtag insurgent group. That afternoon, the USS Gerald R. Ford continued its planned sea trials. 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers escorted on either side, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser following precisely 1,200 meters astern. All weapon systems remained at level 2 alert. All radar, camera, and sonar alert thresholds were updated. Any object approaching within 300 meters without an identification code would be considered a high-level tactical threat. No CNN or Fox News reports mentioned the incident. Only a single line was added to the end of the classified report sent to the Pentagon. We thwarted the attack today, but perhaps that was just their first rehearsal. If you found this article offered a different perspective on modern warfare and the limits of military technology, feel free to share it with anyone. This article is based on hypothetical scenarios used for storytelling purposes, aiming to recreate and expand strategic depth for readers interested in military and global security topics. We do not endorse war, propagate propaganda, or represent any government or organization. The content is purely for simulation and personal analysis. Any misinterpretations will not be accepted. We are not responsible for the subjective understanding of the viewer.